I cannot believe what just happened in Prince Harry's court case. You know how he always says he's standing up to the media and finally telling his truth? Well, that truth just came back to haunt him in the worst way possible. His own memoir was read out loud in court to contradict his sworn testimony, and the reaction was painful. We're breaking down exactly what went wrong, because this might change everything. Okay, so here's the thing. Prince Harry did not lose control of this case because of some shocking new evidence or a surprise witness. He lost control because of himself. He sat in that London courtroom, swore to tell the truth, and confidently denied having certain private conversations. And then, in what might be one of the most jaw-dropping legal moments in recent celebrity history, the opposing lawyers calmly opened a copy of Spare and read his own words back to him. Word for word, conversations he said never happened were right there in his own memoir, published for the entire world to read. The shift in the room was instant, and according to people who were there, you could literally see the color drain from his face. This is where it stopped being embarrassing and started becoming dangerous. Harry has spent years insisting that Spare is his most honest work, that it was checked, rechecked, and fact-checked within an inch of its life. He went on television and told interviewers that this book was the definitive account of his experiences, and now that same book is being used in court to suggest that he said one thing under oath and something very different when money was involved. That's not just awkward, that's the kind of contradiction that makes judges sit up straighter and lawyers smell blood in the water. Sources close to the proceedings described the moment as catastrophic for Harry's credibility. One observer said he looked genuinely stunned, like this possibility never crossed his mind. And that alone is wild. How do you walk into a courtroom knowing your own memoir exists and not expect it to be used against you? Did no one prep him for this? Did he not remember what he wrote? Because the optics are brutal. A prince who claimed his book was the truth, now facing his own truth as evidence against him. And that was just the opening act, because once the door was open to questioning his credibility, everything else started piling on. His behavior on the stand, the judge's reactions, the financial warnings hanging over the case, and the growing sense that this entire legal strategy might collapse under its own weight, all began to surface at once. And as this all unfolded, it became very clear. This was not just a bad day in court. It was the kind of moment that can permanently change how a case and a person is seen going forward, especially when millions and reputations are on the line. To understand how this blew up so badly, we need to slow down and look at what actually happened in that courtroom. Prince Harry is part of a group of claimants suing the publisher of the Daily Mail. They're accusing them of unlawful information gathering. This includes allegations like phone hacking and other invasive tactics. Harry has positioned himself as the ultimate victim of tabloid abuse, someone who was targeted relentlessly and unfairly for years. On the stand, he was asked about specific conversations and events that he claims were misrepresented or fabricated by the press. And this is where the problem started. When questioned about discussions with his former girlfriend during a trip to Botswana, Harry was very firm. He denied that certain conversations ever took place. He suggested that the media either exaggerated or outright invented them. He framed himself as someone whose private life had been twisted for profit. But then came the moment no one seems to have prepared him for. The opposing counsel opened Spare to the exact pages where Harry himself described those conversations in detail. Same setting, same context, same emotional beats. The room reportedly went dead silent as those passages were read aloud. Now let's be real for a second. This is not a minor slip-up. In legal terms, this is a massive problem. When your sworn testimony directly conflicts with your own published writing, the court has to ask, which version is true? And once that question is raised, everything else you say gets scrutinized harder. Legal commentators immediately pointed out that this kind of contradiction can seriously undermine an entire case, because credibility is the foundation of claims like these. And it did not stop there. As the questioning continued, Harry reportedly became defensive and argumentative. Instead of calmly answering, he pushed back, challenged questions, and tried to debate the lawyers examining him. At multiple points, the judge had to step in and remind him that this was not a discussion or a performance. According to people in the room, the judge explicitly told Harry that he was doing what many litigants do, arguing instead of answering. That is never a good look, especially when you're already under pressure. By the end of the day, the sense in the room was that something had shifted. What started as a confident appearance turned into a series of missteps that raised serious doubts about Harry's preparation, his strategy, and whether he truly understood what he was walking into. And that shift is exactly what fueled the wave of reactions that exploded online almost immediately after. As soon as details from the courtroom started circulating, the internet did what it does best and went absolutely feral. Social media was flooded with clips, quotes, and hot takes. And the dominant reaction? Disbelief. People could not get over the fact that Harry's own memoir was used to contradict him under oath. One comment that kept popping up was some version of, "How do you forget what you wrote in a book you got paid millions for?" And honestly, that's a fair question. There was also a huge divide in how people interpreted his performance. Supporters argued that Harry has lived through years of trauma and media abuse. That being questioned aggressively about his private life could understandably trigger defensiveness. They saw his pushback as emotional, not dishonest. But critics were not buying it at all. They pointed to his confidence before the contradictions were exposed and how quickly that confidence disappeared once his own words were used against him. To them, it looked less like trauma and more like someone being caught off guard. Then came the reaction to his emotional moment on the stand. Harry reportedly became visibly upset when talking about Meghan and the impact media coverage has had on their lives. On paper, that sounds powerful. But many observers immediately noticed a problem with the timing. This case focuses on events that predate their relationship, which made the tears feel misplaced to some. Online, people were openly questioning whether the emotion was genuine or strategic, especially since it happened during questioning from his own lawyer rather than cross-examination. Media commentators were especially blunt. Several noted that courtroom emotion can be compelling, but only when it aligns clearly with the facts of the case. Here, many felt it distracted from the core issues instead of strengthening them, and once that narrative took hold, it became another blow to his credibility. Because in high-stakes legal battles, perception matters almost as much as evidence, and the perception forming online was not kind. What really fueled the fire, though, was the growing sense that this situation was completely self-inflicted. People kept circling back to the same point. Harry chose to write spare. He chose to promote it as absolute truth. And now, that choice is echoing back in a courtroom in ways he clearly did not anticipate, which is exactly why the broader context started coming into focus next. This moment hits harder when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture of Harry's post-royal life. Since stepping back from royal duties, he has built an entire public identity around telling his story and holding the media accountable. That mission has powered his interviews, his documentaries, and, of course, his memoir. But here's where things get complicated. While criticizing tabloids for profiting off his pain, Harry has also made an extraordinary amount of money doing exactly that himself. Between book deals, streaming contracts, and high-profile interviews, he has earned well over $100 million by sharing the most intimate details of his life. That contradiction did not go unnoticed in court. The defense reportedly emphasized how difficult it is to claim exploitation while simultaneously running one of the most successful self-commercialization campaigns in recent celebrity history. One commentator summed it up perfectly by saying, "No one has monetized Prince Harry's private life more effectively than Prince Harry." There's also the issue of his claim that he was prevented from suing the press while he was a working royal. This has been one of his core arguments for why these legal battles are happening now. But that narrative starts to wobble when you remember that other senior royals have successfully taken legal action while still in their roles. That precedent makes Harry's explanation look at best incomplete, and at worst, misleading. And once again, it feeds into the idea that his version of events does not always hold up under scrutiny. Financially, the stakes could not be higher. The judge has already warned that the claimants have spent around £40 million in legal costs. If this case goes badly, Harry could be personally exposed to a massive financial hit. At the same time, reports suggest his major media deals are no longer producing the returns they once promised. That combination has led many observers to describe this lawsuit not as a bold stand, but as a dangerous gamble. When you put all of this together, the contradictions in court start to look less like isolated mistakes and more like part of a pattern where emotion, narrative, and publicity repeatedly collide with facts and consequences, setting the stage for what might come next. So let's be real here. The core drama comes down to one brutal truth. Prince Harry's greatest weapon has always been his story, and that story is now working against him. In one courtroom appearance, his own memoir raised questions about his honesty. His courtroom behavior raised concerns about his judgment, and the financial warnings raised fears about the future. That is a lot to unravel from a single day on the stand. My take is this: Harry seems genuinely convinced of his own narrative. But conviction does not replace consistency. Courts do not care about vibes, intentions, or personal truth journeys. They care about evidence, timelines, and credibility. And once a judge starts questioning whether you can be relied upon as a witness, the road back is very steep. This case was supposed to be about holding the media accountable. Instead, it's turned into a referendum on Harry himself. Looking ahead, the possibilities are not great. If he loses, the financial consequences could be devastating, especially if future media deals continue to dry up. Even if he somehow wins, the damage to his public image may already be done. The contradiction between fighting commercialization and profiting from it is now firmly cemented in the public consciousness. And that is not something you easily walk back with another interview or documentary. The saddest part, honestly, is that this did not have to go this way. A quieter approach, tighter legal strategy, and less reliance on emotional spectacle might have produced a very different outcome. Instead, this feels like another chapter in a long pattern of self-sabotage. That keeps getting harder to ignore. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think this courtroom moment has permanently damaged Harry's credibility? Or can he still recover from this? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is far from over.